Most genetic conditions are carried on our body chromosomes, also known as our autosomal chromosomes. So these are going to be autosomal conditions. We've already talked about two conditions which are carried on the sex chromosomes, color blindness and hemophilia. Most autosomal conditions are recessive, and there are a couple of different types. The first is Huntington's. This is the exception to this rule. Huntington's is caused by a dominant allele. And this is when your brain starts to deteriorate, normally around the middle ages. Tay-Sachs disease is a recessive condition, and this is when your body lacks enzymes to break down lipids. So, for example, lipase isn't present in people who have Tay-Sachs, and those lipids can build up and eventually cause death. PKU is when your body can't use an amino acid, phenylalanine, and again, a buildup of that will cause a person to die. Cystic fibrosis, this is a recessive condition in which there's a buildup of mucus within somebody's lungs. And the last but most common is sickle cell anemia. And this is when your blood cells aren't round. So normally your blood cells look like a circular shape, and that's to carry oxygen. And sickle cell anemia causes those cells to become sickled or change their shape. So they can't carry as much oxygen, so it poses a problem for respiration. There is, however, an advantage to being heterozygous for sickle cell anemia. People who are heterozygous will have some round red blood cells and some sickled red blood cells. But people who are heterozygous have a much lower chance of getting malaria. And malaria is caused by a protist, which is carried in mosquitoes and passed on to humans. The opposite of autosomal conditions would be chromosomal conditions. And these are conditions which will be caused by non-disjunction. And non-disjunction is when chromosomes don't get pulled apart properly in meiosis. So one cell will end up having an extra chromosome, and one cell will end up missing. The most common of these are trisomy 21, also known as Down syndrome. This is when you have an extra chromosome at pair 21. Trisomy 18 is when there's an extra chromosome at pair 18. Klinefelter syndrome is a condition that occurs in males in which they have an extra X chromosome. So normally they're XY. Klinefelter's makes them XXY, and it'll actually give them female characteristics. And Turner syndrome occurs in females, and this is when they only have one X. So they lack some of the feminine characteristics that other females have. This is an example of a karyotype, and a karyotype is a picture of chromosome pairs. So through a karyotype, you can determine the gender of a person, and you can detect an unusual number of chromosomes. So for example, if we were looking to see if somebody had Down syndrome, we would look at site 21 and make sure that we only had 2 pairs. If there were 3 pairs, then that would be an indication of Down syndrome. Pair number 23 is our sex chromosomes. So the bigger chromosome will be your X, and the smaller would be your Y. So this person right here would be a male. With gene expression, there can be multiple factors that affect that. So environmental factors can affect how genes are expressed. Also, chemical signals will activate different parts of DNA, so that way different proteins are made. This is what would determine your skin cell function and make that different from a lung function, or cell in your lung. So some examples of how gene expression can be affected. Hydrangeas, the pH of the soil will actually affect the color of their flowers. Tobacco use or radiation, this will actually change your cell division checkpoints, and altering those checkpoints can lead to cancer, which is uncontrolled cell division. For conditions like diabetes and heart disease, your health habits and diet have a large impact on whether or not you're going to have these genes expressed and therefore have that condition.